Greetings, students, and welcome to week 10, where we explore credibility, authority, and evaluation. This week, we're going to be looking at credibility traditionally, as well as in an evolving news information ecosystem. We'll look at the role of the information professional in assessing truthiness or reliability. We'll examine how to explore user-generated content, social media, and manipulated content. And we'll think about how we can continue to seek reliability. Our essential questions are: how do we negotiate truth in a user-generated information landscape? What questions should we ask about new information formats? In what ways is authority constructed and contextual? What should we do about fake news, misinformation, disinformation, and manipulated content? You may remember Phil Bradley, who talked about the role of the information professional. A vital activity that information professionals have always undertaken is checking the validity of the content that they find and warning or advising their inquirers. The publication date of a book, the bias of a newspaper, the expertise of the author, the respect accorded the journal, and the number of citations for the article are all standard criteria that have been used on a daily basis and, of course, are still used. User-generated social media content has made the problem of authority checking harder by several levels of magnitude. So we're dealing with the old programmer's acronym of GIGO that we looked at way earlier in the semester. And of course, GIGO stands for garbage in, garbage out. And in our minds, as we process information as citizens, as we put together content as writers, as students, we need to think about whether the information that we're consuming and with which we're creating is garbage or credible, reliable, and valuable. So let's take a very speedy research tour of some material might be familiar to you. You may remember Herbert Simon, who talked about humans' propensity to satisfy. He said, evidently, organisms adapt well enough to satisfy. They do not, in general, optimize. And of course, this is a portmanteau of suffice and satisfy. You may remember George Ziff, who talked about our tendency to communicate efficiency with the least effort. The theory known as Ziff's law is applied to search. Each individual will adopt a course of action that will involve the expenditure of the probable least average of his work. They will use the most convenient search method and stop as soon as minimally accepted results are found. Looking at this more recently, Pew Research, the Centers for Journalism and Media and for the Internet have done an awful lot of studies in which they've also discovered that convenience is the most commonly mentioned benefit when they use social media platforms. And social media platforms are heavily used. 2/3 of Americans get news on social media. Another survey of over 5,000 adults measured the public's ability to distinguish between 5 statements of fact and opinion. Far fewer Americans got all 5 right, and roughly a quarter got almost all wrong. We have a mandate, for instance, to help people think about filter bubbles, how they're finding information, and whether or not they are in a bubble of their own making. Way back in 2005, Stephen Colbert coined the term or the word truthiness, which became very, very popular as a quality characterizing a truth that a person making an argument or assertion claims to know intuitively from the gut because it feels right. This is without regard to evidence, logic, intellectual examination, or fact. And so, how many times do we know something in our bellies, and we know the truthiness of it without really investigating? Back in the year 2016, following the 2016 election and Brexit, the Oxford English Dictionary, or the Oxford Dictionaries, made the word post-truth the word of the year. And apparently this was contentious. It's an adjective defined as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Indeed, right now, we're relying so much on user-generated content. And so many times, the users who are generating these contents are actually experts and that in a contextual way. And so many times, they're experts in a manipulative way. And so many times, they're just regular folks sharing opinions. And so it's our job to discover whether that expert is just wearing a badge that says expert, or really is there true expertise that either is contextual or has to do with some serious and acknowledged authority. We are seeing a flood of information, both images and video. And I remember this starting in 2012 following Hurricane Sandy, in which all of these fake images came, and we were relying on citizen journalists, and major news organizations were relying on citizen journalists who were taking photographs around their homes and in the spots that were hit by Sandy before the reporters could get there in a 24/7 news cycle. And some of these were intentionally manipulated. Atlantic had a great article at that time helping us discern the fakes from the real images. And this is becoming an increasingly important skill. One site to look at is Debbie Abelock's Noodle Tools site. And it's a wonderful tool for younger grades through high school and probably undergrad, asking us to look at born digital images. And so one of the questions she asks is this baby in a canoe really floating by themselves in a body of water? And one of the things she points to as a clue is that there isn't a reflection in this canoe. And if you had a closer look at that image, and I hope you do take a closer look, you can see that. And she has great questions to ask of born digital images. Right now, we're not only seeing doctored images, we're seeing doctored video, and deep fakes. While they were fun, they were playing with movie memes and tropes for a while. They're now becoming increasingly dangerous. So we're seeing an app that is violating women by using their real pictures and putting their faces on nude bodies. We see politicians saying things that they didn't really say. And in this case, on the right there was a famously doctored video of Nancy Pelosi making her appear drunk, and that was spread on social media. And this is one example of an Instagram post.
I wish I could keep telling you that our mission in life is connecting people, but it isn't. We just want to predict your future behaviors. Spectre showed me how to manipulate you into sharing intimate data about yourself and all those you love for free. The more you express yourself, the more we own you.
While we're learning a lot more about how algorithms work and how they manipulate us, Mark Zuckerberg never actually said those words. And so we have an awful lot of work to do and things to worry about. In fact, Dana Boyd said, what's at stake here really isn't just about fake news. What's at stake is the increasing capacity of those committed to a form of isolationist and hate-driven tribalism that has been around for a very long time. They have evolved with the information landscape, becoming sophisticated in leveraging whatever tools are available to achieve power, status, and attention. And those seeking a progressive and inclusive agenda, those seeking to combat tribalism to form a more perfect union, they haven't kept up. They haven't caught up with a whole number of factors, including the 24/7 news cycle and its overload, the amount of choice consumers have in terms of their news and other information, the existence of bots and artificial intelligence, immediate penetration of news into our lives, an authenticity crisis, and clearly hidden revenue and political interests that we're seeing. And there's the fact that suspicious information is not always recognizable, and it often comes in the form of multiple buckets. So fake news itself includes pure fake news, which is mis, dis, and malinformation. We see hoax sites, we see satirical sites, we see clear propaganda and subtle propaganda. And as we mentioned, we see born digital images and edited images and video. It's much more sophisticated, but fake news is not new. It's been around since the beginning of time in various different formats. And this is Common Sense Media's wonderful poster. As the terms I mentioned, misinformation, just to be clear, this is Clear Waddell's definition from First Draft from the Shorenstein Center. Misinformation is when false information is shared but no harm is meant. Disinformation is when false information is knowingly shared to cause harm. And malinformation is when genuine information is shared to cause harm, often motivated by private information into the public sphere. This poster from the EVE organization explores the motivation and the impact levels, the insidiousness or less insidiousness of various different types of fake news. So we've got problems, but we also have opportunities. And this opportunity is one that is indeed in our own DNA as librarians. Our communities count on us. They trust us to bring quality and meaning to the table and to ensure access, choice, and to be their guides. When the 2016 election was over, I wrote a post on truth, truthiness, and triangulation, which presented a toolkit that I keep updating for distinguishing truth in a post-truth world. And it got some notice. In fact, I was very surprised that my blog was at all noticed outside of the library world. But we're seeing this recognition that librarians are point people in the notion of discerning truth. This article in Forbes also spoke about our importance in a fake news environment and in terms of information overload. And I was really taken by this speech that John Green made at a school library journal summit a few years back about the role of librarians in this environment.
Turn out to be supremely underappreciated. And that's why I think teachers and librarians will be so important when it comes to addressing the information literacy crisis. I think a lot of it has to happen IRL because your filter bubbles are more effectively challenged IRL. And I also think we need experts to teach us how to access and use content that will make us better informed. I don't think algorithms will ever do that because algorithms are not in the making a better informed citizenry business. They are in the maximizing advertising impressions business. Fortunately, we do have experts in this field. For millennia, librarians have been organizing and serving high-quality information amid a sea of low-quality information. We have trained professionals who've been hired for their expertise at interpreting research, at synthesizing complex ideas, and at teaching learners how to do that as well. I think we need to talk about information literacy online, and I think we need to fight to make algorithms work better. But I also think we need to empower an army of expert librarians and educators to make a future that is more information literate than our present. And I think a lot of that work is going to happen in real life because it can't be scaled, it can't be automated, it is human to human work.
At a South by Southwest a few years back, again, Dana Boyd spoke up saying that the way we teach information literacy has been problematic, that for this new web, new skills are needed, and we need to teach in different ways. She mentioned in the speech, there's a perverted version of media literacy underway. Students are asked to distinguish between CNN and Fox. You should not trust Wikipedia, but Google it. We don't know people who are not like us. Make sure students are aware of how information is socially constructed. I believe that you actually have to help young people appreciate epistemological differences. In other words, why do people from different worldviews interpret the same piece of information differently? Her speech engendered an awful lot of wrath from the very serious media literacy educators who have nuanced ways of helping us understand media literacy. But we also know that there are folks out there who are really teaching a very binary approach to evaluating sources. And so we've got some work to do. We have opportunities and we have work. What are some of the solutions? People rely on us. This is our curriculum and it must be sustained by a whole community. And at this moment, we have to be ark builders. No more prizes for predicting rain, only prizes for building arks. But how? Well, in higher education and LIS, we have very clear statements of how we might do this in the ACRL framework. Authority is constructed and contextual. This is a very nuanced and thoughtful approach to modeling and teaching about information literacy. You can see it in so many of the LibGuides out there that are published. There's a slew of brilliant models in the LibGuides community. There, we're going to be looking at Project Cora and a number of other portals for instruction. And I think you're going to be inspired with really exciting ways to teach these concepts. There are courses that are out there published. This is University of Washington's iSchool that launched a course a little while ago called Calling Bullshit. University of Michigan Library had a course that's still up, and I think it's open access, on lies propaganda, and University of Rhode Island. Another example is Renee Hobbs from the University of Rhode Island. These are her wonderful modules on propaganda education. At the K-12 level, of course, we've got the AASL standards. At least two of the shared foundations are directly related to establishing credibility and thinking critically about information that we use and curate. And then, of course, ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology and Education, also in its student standards looks at student using information effectively and evaluating information for its accuracy, perspective, and credibility and relevance as knowledge constructors. The Center for Media Literacy, which largely serves K-12, asks us to ask 5 key questions about any media message as we look at it and deconstruct it. So in light of all this, the Stanford History Education Group, or SHEG, did a number of studies, this one dealing with largely K-12, and they discovered students' ability to evaluate information, especially information on social media, was bleak. Only 25% of high school students were able to identify an accurate news story when also given a fake one. Students could not distinguish between real and fake photographs, authentic and staged videos, or investigate the authority of a tweet. One of the authors, Sarah McGrew, said the internet is not going to change. They're not going to only allow credible information. We're the ones who are going to need to change, and we have to get better by teaching students how to do it. So I'm a big fangirl of Chegg, and I've written a couple of blog posts about it. This one announced the digital literacy assessments that were actually used in the study itself that you could use yourself with students. This is what two of them look like. One is homepage analysis. In that first one on the left, it says there that 80% of middle schoolers got this wrong, even though the content was labeled sponsored. They didn't understand that what they were looking at was an ad. In the one that says claims on Twitter, we're looking at daisies that were claimed to have mutated because of the Fukushima nuclear disaster. But when you do a reverse image search, you discover that those images existed before the disaster in another place entirely. This is a list, a hyperlinked list of those assessments that were used in the study. And it has recently, the Chegg content has been recently reorganized in the Civic Online Reasoning curriculum, and a number of videos were added in cooperation with Michael Caulfield, as well as with John Green and Hank Green and the gang from Crash Course. These are highly engaging. We're going to look at a couple of them in a minute, and I really think they're very useful. In the package, you'll find not only those videos, but activities, lesson plans, and posters. And this one, I think, is one of the simplest pieces of instruction on how to evaluate information. Who's behind the information? What's the evidence? And what do other sources say? Note that what do other sources say is a very important criteria. So one of the pieces I wrote about Chegg was about a study they did that suggested that we are teaching information literacy wrong. The researchers in this case studied 263 college students at a large East Coast State University and asked them just to do two tasks. The first task asked them to evaluate the trustworthiness of a news story from a satirical website. 2/3 of those college students failed to recognize the article was satire. The few who left to investigate the Seattle Tribune website found the clear disclaimer that it was a satirical site. In the second task, students were asked to evaluate the credibility of an article on the minimumwage.com website. Though the Cloak site claims to sponsor nonpartisan research, a quick search of the parent organization, the Employment Policies Institute, reveals connections between what's called the Institute and a professional restaurant industry lobbyist who had clear interest in maintaining lower minimum wages. Students did not generally leave the document to evaluate it. This is all in line with Mike Caulfield's model, 4 Habits and a Move for Information Literacy, which suggests a very short list for students to do to make habits as they evaluate information online. Generally, these are the 4 moves. Note that they're check for previous work, go upstream, always go to the source of the claim, read laterally. Once you get to the source, read what other people have said. That means leave the document and circle back. As you go back, you'll be able to use what you discover in the earlier parts of your investigation. There is a study that specifically looks at reading laterally, where they discovered that professional fact checkers did better than university students in assessing credibility. And that's because historians and students fell victim to easily manipulated features of websites, such as official-looking logos and domain names. They read vertically, staying within the website to evaluate its reliability. In contrast, fact checkers read laterally, leaving a site after a quick scan and opening new browser tabs in order to judge credibility of the original site. And fact checkers not only did a better job, they did it more efficiently in a fraction of the time. And so we are moving far away from things like the CRAP test, which forces students to stay within a document to evaluate its credibility, And in a time when documents are very carefully crafted to look like the real thing, the crap test can be pretty crappy. Similarly, my good friend Kathy Schrock's 5 W's of website evaluation really don't force you to leave the website to do evaluation. And so they are as well problematic. We're reaching some new discoveries about what is good and what is not good in terms of this idea that really isn't a thing, good or not good. It's not binary. In the office, Michael Scott tells us about how wonderful the Wikipedia is because everybody can have access to adding or changing information. And while people laughed at this video a while back, Michael Scott has some wisdom there. Wikipedia, when we know how to use it well, as Debbie Avalock says, can be a very important tool. It's just how well do we know how to use Wikipedia? And Debbie suggests that there are some strategies you can use for weighing the truthiness in Wikipedia. And these are questions that she suggests we regularly ask. And then the other thing is Wikipedia has gotten better and better. In a world where authority is constructed and contextual and scholarship is a conversation, should the use or non-use of Wikipedia remain a binary decision or a shameful experience? As an open web source or reference source, it's under continual construction, and just as it is subject to hacking and bias, it's also subject to revision, fact checks, updates, improvements from a well-established collaborative system of editorial oversight and control. In fact, many scientists use Wikipedia as a preliminary place to put their research and findings. And just recently, Internet Archive has been adding book texts to support the articles that are already part of often the very impressive Wikipedia works cited or bibliographies. And it is getting better and better. And I don't know anybody who doesn't start with Wikipedia as a way to get context or understand the intellectual or contextual conversation that's been going on around a topic. And students in the research that I'm doing are ashamed to admit that they use it when they should maybe not cite it for particular reasons, but why be embarrassed about saying that you use it? This is a wonderful little video about from Sheg about using Wikipedia wisely.
Many educators tell students they shouldn't use Wikipedia because it's full of mistakes and anybody can edit a page. If that's the case, then why, in our observations of professional fact-checkers, was Wikipedia one of the first sites they often consulted? It's true that there are mistakes in Wikipedia. A 2005 study from Nature found that the typical Wikipedia science article had 4 mistakes. But the same study found that the typical Encyclopedia Britannica entry contained 3 mistakes. In contrast to a print encyclopedia, Wikipedia allows for changes to be made almost immediately and for information to be kept current. And it's not true that anyone can edit any Wikipedia page. Many of the most viewed entries are locked, which means that only high-level Wikipedians can change them. To tell students not to use Wikipedia is to deprive them of one of the most useful tools on the internet. Instead of teaching them to avoid it, we should be teaching students how to use Wikipedia wisely. When fact-checkers go to Wikipedia, they scan the body of an article, but what they are really looking for is the gold mine of sources at the end of the article. For example, the American College of Pediatricians has an official-sounding name and logo. It's easy to think that it's the main organization of pediatricians in the country. But even a quick scan of Wikipedia shows that not to be the case. But the real evidence comes at the bottom, in the references Wikipedia requires in substantiating a claim. In a matter of seconds, Students can find in these references a letter from Francis S. Collins, the head of the National Institute of Health, condemning this small group for misrepresenting his research findings. This brings the trustworthiness of the American College of Pediatricians into question. And fact checkers don't just examine one source, they look at multiple sources. Used properly, Wikipedia is an invaluable resource, especially as a launching pad for evaluating online information. We need to teach students how to use it wisely.
Another topic that's come up recently relating to the COVID pandemic is the notion that we are now facing what's called an infodemic. In fact, there have been calls for infodemiologists or around infodemiology. The World Health Organization and UNESCO have been talking about the infodemic, promoting healthy behaviors and mitigating the harm from misinformation and disinformation. There have been a number of scholarly articles in the medical journals talking about our current infodemic. Here is another short video that describes the issue relating to health information in an infodemic.
We're not just fighting an epidemic, we're fighting an infodemic. This famous quote from WHO Director General has been widely shared. So what is an infodemic? An infodemic is an excessive amount of information about a problem, making it difficult to identify a solution. During a health emergency, an infodemic can drown out reliable information and allow rumors to spread more easily, impeding an effective public health response. Why is it happening now? Information can spread faster than a virus. With rapid growth of digital communications and social media platforms, information spreads fast from online to our physical lives. And how does it affect us? Online information can negatively affect our psychology, daily lives, and behaviors, worsening the ongoing crisis at hand. Infodemics make it difficult to recognize accurate and reliable information that tells people what preventative actions they should take. Some even promote stigma, discrimination, or violence. Therefore, we all play an important role to share trustworthy information and reduce disinformation. Here are simple actions we can do to mitigate the infodemic. 1. Look for facts and evidence. Be critical when receiving information. Question the source for accuracy and evidence. Compare with other sources. 2. Choose carefully. Share, like, or forward only content from trusted sources. 3. Be cautious. Do not reshare, forward, or like false information you know is not true. 4. Be a good example. Correct or call out people in your social networks when they post something untrue. Refer them to verified content and expert organizations for further information. 5. Spend less time online. Only seek the latest information at specific times of the day, once or twice a day if needed. Exercise, listen to music, or read a book. This helps to maintain good physical and mental health. Together, let's combat disinformation and misinformation. Turn the infodemic into a positive information experience, one that promotes facts and science.
Among the resources the World Health Organization offers us is this little map of a network that shows how we might be the person in the node that is gray, not sending a rumor to a chat group, or double checking facts, or getting news from trusted sources, or asking others, how do you know that this is true? Among the things we might do is introduce a new glossary, because a lot of the terms we're talking about are not familiar to our community. I've worked on this news literacy vocabulary, which I continue to update, that might be useful. Among the terms that are included there are some of these: virality, clickbait, confirmation bias, echo chamber, herding behavior, herding phenomenon, native advertising, reputation and brand heuristics, triangulation, trolls. Making people aware of vocabulary and having them have a language for identifying the things that they're seeing, that they're skeptical about is important. As librarians, one of our talents is curating options for discoverability. So among those might be expanding our community's news feed and really mitigating echo chambers and filter bubbles among our communities, teaching people how to curate for themselves. I thought about that when I used to go to the gym, and I would see all of the news shows on in the morning, and I realized it was wonderful to be able to move so quickly among all of those and make my choices. And I always felt like when I left the gym that I had a broader, more holistic sense of what the news of the day was. We used to have these options for our patrons, but we can create our own little curated news feeds or little newsrooms for our community by just gathering the options together and juxtaposing them so people know what their choices are. We can also promote and put really upfront some of the news resources that our libraries pay for that may not be as easily discovered as they could be. There are a whole bunch of fact checkers that we can put on a library website and make available. We can encourage ourselves and our colleagues and our patrons to use tools like Whois to find out who owns a domain of a website that we'd like to use in our research or for our decision making. We can use tools like AllSides as a starting point, a great portal for news that evaluates news based on whether it's left, center, or right. Now, this doesn't do an article level judgment, but it's about the source level, the journal, the news agency, and it really helps. So for each article, you're going to see one of those letters, and you can see the scale as we move from left to right on that image on the right. Not only do they do that, they allow you to search by topic, and that's wonderful if you're browsing for news and you or you're doing a research project and you need a topic or an issue. This is a great tool for kids. And it also explores language. How is language used across perspectives? How does the left and the right address the language about an issue? And this is an article that talks about the origin of the term fake news and how it's been used by a variety of different groups. So I love the AllSides dictionary, and it's one of my favorite current tools. And we talked a little, we looked at the value of a browse for news information. I want us to remember also that our databases are also fabulous news sources. This is Gale's Global Issues and the bento box approach to topic browsing and the subtopics within each one of these and the contextual notes at the beginning make it a lot easier for young people, especially, to get into a conversation around a complicated news topic. It's important to recognize that a lot of the decisions we make regarding news and current issues need to let ambiguity in as part of an authentic experience. We also need to create a few good tools for sustained instruction and for learning across a community or culture. When I was at the high school, I had news literacy's rules of thumb, which I don't think is as good now as the Caulfield model or some of the others, but it's worth looking at because these things, creating these for your community or sharing an established model with your community, builds a vocabulary within a culture, within a school, within a geographical community. And at a school especially, you're going to be using tools that scaffold instruction and learning. And so the annotated works cited, the evaluative annotated works cited puts the onus of skepticism on the learner, and they are evaluating their sources as part of the experience. In fact, many times the works cited itself was the project, and the students did not need to write the essay or the paper. We wanted to see their facility with choosing credible sources and with the understanding that credibility is contextual. So if you chose a blog post, why is this blog poster? If you chose a Twitter feed, why did you choose this tweeter? what context makes this person authoritative? These were alternate questions for a works cited for a younger student. And this was our contextual current events scaffold, which I thought asked questions that had to do with, so what, why is this important, and what do other people say? But sadly, or for what it's worth, we can do all the education in the world, but there are some folks who are not going to change. They like their filter bubble and they like their echo chamber. And as the joke goes, the light bulb has to really want to change. Folks don't always want to change their news and information habits. And so I think our kids need new types of filters beyond larger notions of information literacy. There's a case for a focus on news literacy, not as a lesson in good or bad or an attempt to pitch traditional media against social or peer-reviewed against popular publications, not through an examination of intentionally hokey sites for instruction, and certainly not as a one-of checklist type of lesson for 9th grade or the social studies teacher in September. We need to teach and promote important lessons of everyday civics and facilitate discovery for new consumption and production ecosystems. It is up to the reader or the viewer to negotiate truth, but they do need to see their options. They need to see beyond their epistemologies, and they need to see epistemologies beyond their own, and they will often rely on us for help. Finally, nurturing information literate, responsible, active citizens is what librarians do. We teach students to be discerning consumers of information. We teach them to deconstruct media messages and construct their own messages. We teach them to interrogate their sources. So as the landscape continues to shift, librarians must update their own skills and toolkits to guide students in navigating very nuanced universes of news. We must also examine and recognize our own biases so we are open to contrary and conflicting ideas. This is our banner to wave. This is our curriculum to teach or co-teach. So, summing up, credibility traditionally and a user-generated information ecosystem is what we looked at today. We looked at the contextual nature of credibility assessment, the role of the information professional in assessing truthiness, reliability, and in guiding users, patrons, and learners.